Imagine waking up to a sound that doesn't just hit your ears, but vibrates through your very teeth. It's a rhythmic, metallic thud that has been going on for months, a sound that signifies the slow, inevitable grinding of an empire against a city that refuses to die. In the year 70 AD, Jerusalem wasn't just a city. It was the spiritual center of the world, a fortress that many believed was literally protected by the hand of God. But outside its massive walls stood the Roman legions, the most efficient killing machine the ancient world had ever seen. This wasn't just a battle. It was a collision of two worlds, a technological nightmare, and a psychological descent into madness. What happened during these 5 months changed the course of human history forever. And today, we are going to do something different. We aren't just looking at maps or dates. We are going inside. We are going to spend 24 hours in the shoes of someone trapped behind those walls, feeling the heat, the hunger, and the sheer terror of the greatest siege of the ancient age. This is the story of how the impossible happened, and why, by the end of this video, you'll realize that reality is often far more brutal than any horror movie you've ever watched. Before we step into the dust of 70 AD, do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. It is 6 o'clock in the morning, and the first thing you feel isn't fear, it's thirst. Your throat feels like it's been lined with sandpaper. In Jerusalem, by the summer of 70 AD, water has become more valuable than gold, more precious than jewels. You crawl out from whatever corner of a stone house you've been huddled in and head toward the only thing that matters, the water. Most of the city's water sources have been cut off or are under constant fire. To survive, you have to go deep. You find yourself descending into the tunnel of Hezekiah, a cramped, dark limestone corridor carved hundreds of years ago. As you move through the dark with a flickering oil lamp, you hear the echoes of hundreds of others. This tunnel was a feat of ancient engineering, designed to bring water from the Gihon spring into the city while keeping it hidden from invaders. But now, it's a bottleneck of desperation. People are fighting for a single cup of murky, sediment-heavy water. You see mothers trying to moisten their children's lips with damp rags. This is the reality of a city under siege. The most basic element of life has become a luxury that people are willing to kill for. And the crazy thing is, as you're down there in the dark, the ground above you is shaking. You can hear the muffled thuds of the Roman artillery hitting the city above your head. It's a reminder that even in the womb of the earth, you aren't safe. By noon, the sun is high and the heat is oppressive, but the noise from outside has reached a fever pitch. You climb up toward the inner walls to see what the Romans are doing, and the sight is enough to make your heart stop. From the top of the ramparts, Jerusalem looks like a beautiful stone crown sitting on a hill, but that crown is being crushed by a ring of iron. The Romans haven't just surrounded the city, they've built their own city around it. To prevent anyone from escaping and to cut off all supplies, the Roman general Titus ordered the construction of a circumvallation wall, a massive wooden and earthwork fortification that stretches for miles, completely encircling Jerusalem. If you try to run, you hit a Roman wall. If you stay, you starve. Looking out, you see the Helepolis, the takers of cities. These are massive, multi-story siege towers covered in soaked animal hides to prevent them from being burned. They tower over your own walls, filled with archers and stone throwers. And then there are the ballistae. These aren't just big crossbows. They are precision-engineered artillery. You watch as a Roman crew loads a stone weighing 25 kilograms, about 55 pounds, into the machine. With a crack like a lightning bolt, the stone is launched. It travels 400 meters through the air, a white blur against the blue sky. You've heard the watchers on the towers cry out, "The sun is coming." A dark joke or a warning about the white stones. And then, a second later, the stone smashes into a house or a group of defenders, turning solid rock and human bone into dust. The Romans are treating this like a geometry problem, and every calculation ends in death. Jerusalem was defended by 3 separate lines of walls, each more formidable than the last. The first wall was the newest, but the Romans have already breached it. They used rams, massive beams tipped with iron that weigh as much as a modern tank. These rams don't just hit the wall. They vibrate the entire structure until the mortar turns to sand and the stones simply slide out. You see the Roman legionaries, organized, disciplined, and relentless. They don't scream or charge blindly. They move in silence, covered by their shields in the testudo or tortoise formation, a moving roof of iron that the defenders' arrows just bounce off of. It's a terrifying contrast. Inside, there is chaos, screaming, and desperation. Outside, there is the cold, calculated science of destruction. And you realize, looking at their camp, that they aren't going anywhere. They have the time, they have the resources, and they have the will to turn this entire mountain into a tomb. But why is the city holding on? Why not just surrender? That's where the story gets even darker, because the greatest enemy isn't just the Romans outside, it's the people standing right next to you. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the hunger begins to gnaw at you in a way that's impossible to describe. But today, the menu of survival is a nightmare. There is no grain left. The granaries, which should have held enough food to last the city for years, are gone. And here is the most tragic part of the story. They weren't destroyed by the Romans. Inside the city, 3 different Jewish factions were fighting a bloody civil war while the Romans watched from the hills. In an act of pure, spiteful madness, these rival groups burned each other's food stores to try and force the others to surrender. Now everyone is paying the price. You see people chewing on their leather belts. You see children scavenging in the dirt for blades of bitter grass or hay. There are whispers of things even worse, of people eating the leather from their sandals, or even worse acts of desperation that Josephus, the historian who recorded these events, could barely bring himself to write down. You find yourself mixing a bit of dust with a few drops of water and some dried, bitter herbs just to have something to swallow, something to trick your stomach into thinking it's not empty. The wealthy families who once lived in palaces are now no different from the beggars, all of them united by a hollow ache in their bellies that never goes away. As the sun begins to set at 6 o'clock, a strange, haunting silence falls over parts of the city, broken only by the chants and prayers coming from the Temple Mount. For the people of Jerusalem, this isn't just a political struggle. It's a cosmic one. You walk toward the temple, the Second Temple, an architectural marvel that was expanded by Herod the Great. It is a mountain of white marble and gold. In the evening light, it seems to glow with its own internal fire. Even now, with the walls crumbling and the Roman eagles circling, thousands of people gather in the courts. They aren't looking at the Roman engines. They are looking at the sky, waiting for a miracle. There is a deep, unshakable belief that God would never allow his house to be destroyed. You see priests continuing the daily sacrifices even as stones from Roman catapults crash into the outer courtyards. The psychology of the city is a mix of extreme trauma and extreme faith. People are reporting omens, a star shaped like a sword hanging over the city, or the massive brass gates of the temple swinging open by themselves. Some see these as signs of doom, others as signs of impending deliverance. This hope is the only thing keeping the city from total collapse, but it's also what makes the coming climax so much more painful. You stand there, looking at the massive stones of the temple, and you wonder if anything on earth could actually bring them down. But while some pray, others are looking for a way out. Below the streets you are walking on is a second city, a dark, cramped network of sewers and drainage tunnels. This was the back door of Jerusalem. Archaeologists today still find the remains of this desperate escape attempt. They find cooking pots, coins, and swords dropped in the muck of the sewers. You might consider trying to crawl through these narrow stone pipes to get past the Roman lines, but the Romans know about them too. They are waiting at the exits, or worse, they are lifting the paving stones and stabbing down into the darkness. There is no out. There is only the wait. The city has become a pressure cooker, and tonight, the lid is finally going to blow off. The tension builds until the final breach. Titus, the Roman commander, supposedly wanted to save the temple. He saw it as a jewel of the empire, a trophy to be preserved. But war has a way of escaping the control of those who start it. On a day much like the one we've described, the Romans finally poured over the inner walls. The fighting was hand-to-hand, room-to-room, a meat grinder of swords and spears. In the chaos, a single Roman soldier, acting without orders, grabbed a piece of burning wood and hurled it through a low golden window in the temple complex. The interior was filled with dry wood, heavy tapestries, and cedar beams. It went up like a torch. The fire was so intense that it didn't just burn. It roared. You can imagine the scream that went up from the defenders. Not a scream of pain, but a scream of total, spiritual brokenness. Their world was ending. The heat was so intense that the gold plating the walls and the ceiling began to liquefy. It didn't just melt, it flowed like water, seeping into the cracks between the massive stone blocks. This led to one of the most literal fulfillments of a prophecy ever recorded. To get to the gold, the Roman soldiers, driven by greed and the adrenaline of battle, used levers and hammers to pry every single stone apart. They literally dismantled the temple stone by stone to recover the precious metal that had cooled in the crevices. By the time the fires died down, the monumental structure that had defined the Jewish world was a smoking pile of rubble. Not one stone was left atop another. The very thing everyone thought was eternal was gone in a single night. As you look around at the end of this day, the city you knew is gone. The silence that follows is the silence of the grave. Out of a population of hundreds of thousands, over 1 million people are said to have perished during the siege, through sword, famine, and disease. The survivors were led away in chains to the mines of Egypt or to die in the arenas of Rome. It was a total, systematic erasure of a civilization's heart. But why does this matter to us today? It matters because it shows us the extremes of the human condition. It shows us how quickly the thin veneer of civilization can strip away when the water runs out and the walls close in. It shows us the incredible heights of human engineering, both for building and for destroying. And it shows us that even the most permanent structures in our world can vanish in a single afternoon of fire and fury. The siege of Jerusalem wasn't just a military victory for Rome. It was a scar on history that never fully healed. When you look at the Arch of Titus in Rome today, you can still see the carvings of Roman soldiers carrying away the golden menorah from the temple, a permanent stone record of this very day. It's a reminder that history isn't just a list of names. It's a series of choices, tragedies, and survivals. If you found this journey through the ruins of 70 AD as haunting and fascinating as I did, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We have so many more of these lost hours of history to explore together, from the depths of ancient tunnels to the tops of forgotten pyramids. Hit that like button. Leave a comment about what ancient event you want us to cover next, and thank you for watching. Your support is what allows us to keep digging into the past and bringing these incredible stories back to the light. We've only scratched the surface of what happened in those tunnels and behind those walls, and the more we dig, the more we realize that the past is never truly dead. It's just waiting for someone to tell its story. Until next time, keep looking back to understand what lies ahead. 1 million lives, one city, and one day that changed everything. That is the weight of history. That is the siege of Jerusalem. Thank you for being here with me today to remember it. Stay curious, and I'll see you in the next one.